Gentlemen, it's Sunday. It's July 5th after Independence Day 2020, and we are on our Sunday call. Amazing stuff happening, and basically one of the things that is really important that's come up is divorce and custody without a lawyer. Now, as I give you this advice, I want you to come to a couple lighthouse pieces in this conversation of that. Number one, if you're going through a divorce and a custody battle without a lawyer, like, we are not attorneys, and you can get yourself into some trouble. You're taking a big risk. We're trying to help you minimize that risk with what we know, not knowing the laws in your county, in your state, and not being lawyers. So with this advice that I'm giving, it's advice that could fail you. But I understand the situation. If you don't have the money and you're going through a divorce and custody case, you have to do a few things, right? There's another thing that I want to tell you is that no matter how bad you get wrecked in a divorce, custody, alimony, child support situation, you have the opportunity to be a great man. And they're almost two independent things. So I want to help men through getting through the whole legal proceeding, but that's the beginning. That's a big fight, and it's heavily stressful, and it's such a crazy situation mentally, but the real journey, and you may not think it now, you may not see it now, you may not know it, but I know it from coaching thousands of men, is where you end up as a man, independent of your family, as a man as leading your family still, and as a man leading the future of your life. That is something which is very real and will work out for you if you get on this right path, okay? So let's start with that. Number one thing in that we're going through different strategies that we do when we don't have an attorney is one, again, man, get a men's group. You hear me say this all the time. You need perspective from other men. They're going to talk you off the ledge. They're going to do what your therapeutic community can't do, or I mean, I guess they are part of the therapeutic community, but your psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, counselor, your advocates, they're not going to have time to field a lot of stuff. And their job literally is to get you in a psychological safe spot and in a spot where you can process things. That's very necessary. And I'm not diminishing it in any way. But what is important about that is they're not there to talk to you after your courtroom or when you get in a fight with your baby mama. They're supposed to calm you down and get you in the right direction so that you can have the right mentality for your future. Whereas a men's group is a little bit different in the sense that we've been there, done that. We're your brothers. We're walking alongside of you. And those types of things are really the hallmarks of it. And it's just so helpful in so many ways. Also, a men's group is different than your lawyer. Your lawyer helps you on the legal battlefield, but they're not there to help you on the emotional battlefield. And a lot of times it's like you want to hammer your ex or whatever. Cool, great. But you need your men's group to be there for you with that. Your attorney's job is to just navigate the law for you. So that's really important. Then, of course, get legal representation. This is not an option for you, I understand, but it can be very helpful. But do not. One of the things I would say, this is a toss-up, okay? This is a toss-up. It could go wrong equally bad here, but what you do with that wrong is important. So if you represent yourself, it could go wrong tragically, right? But if you hire a bad attorney or an attorney that is a friend or doing trade for you, it could go tragically wrong, and that's going to be harder to fix. If you do something wrong, one, you own it. You can see where it goes. You can hire somebody after that, and maybe an attorney can fix those things and have a little bit. Attorneys that mess up tragically. It can get really bad. So that's just my take on it. Both, you're putting yourself at risk, and then of course therapy. So those three things are super important. You know, your mental health, your men's group, and legal representation. So now in this case, when you're doing your own legal representation, I think it's very important that you have a men's group, and I think it's very important that you have an outlet for a mental health professional that you could talk to. And the reason for that is it's just so freaking stressful. You don't go over this sort of stress in your lifetime. So let's get to the nitty-gritty of what you want to do. Step one, legally, what you want to do is you want to list out privately for your eyes only, or maybe you can go over with some trusted individuals. Like if you do have a lawyer, you should do this practice. You need to write down everything that could affect the divorce, the alimony settlement, the custody stuff. So this could be the money you make. This could be any money that is in different accounts. This could be any lies you've told. This could be any secrets that you have with your ex. I want you to be able to see all these things and not just go like, okay, well, that happens, but I don't have to write it. No, I want you to write it down privately. This can, of course, never be seen by anybody on the other side of this legal battle, but you need to write down everything wrong. So this could be stuff that would be affairs. This could be something illegal, violent crimes, abuse. These types of things need to be written down, and they can't be in denial of yourself. They can be very hard to write down. And I'm not talking about the therapeutic aspects of those, but they will come into play. I'm talking about the legal aspects of those. If you can be attacked with them, you need to know about it. The other thing too is that not only do you need to be aware of it. What does Sun Tzu say in The Art of War? It's something like, if you know yourself and you know your enemy, no danger. But if you know yourself but not your enemy, then it's like 50-50. And then if you don't know either, you're just screwed all the time. So that's a botching of the quote, but you get the idea, is that if you can know yourself, that's half of it, right? That's half the battle. To know what you have done wrong is half the battle. Okay, the other thing that you need to look at is you need to look at an assessment of what is legal and what is illegal. What's going to affect a divorce? What's going to affect alimony? What's going to affect child support? What's going to affect custody? So, gossip, your wife and her, whatever affairs or psychological problems may not be as important as you think, or the legal strategy to get for that to mean something, has to be laid out really clear. So for instance, let's say if a woman has something like Marfan syndrome, which is oftentimes used in, a legal battle. Now, not a psychologist, couldn't really tell you the great definition, but it's basically like you're always making one of your kids sick to be able to, you're making one of your kids sick to be able to like get attention and whatever manipulations, a lot of doctor visits, all this sort of stuff. It's fairly a common thing when people are looking at things. So number one, if that is your thing, like you have to prove that to whoever you're talking to. So that could be a mediator, that could be a judge, that could be a jury and a judge. Okay. So the differences of those is like you go to mediation or you go to a hearing, it's going to be a little bit different. Now, when you are in a spot where you are talking to the courts, you have to understand what you're talking to and who you're talking to. So number one, if you're talking to a mediator, making a psychological play, that's a pretty hard thing to prove, okay? So if you're in front of a judge, that could be a pretty hard thing to prove. Like, how are you going to prove that? How are you going to prove that, and what does that mean? So a lawyer might be able to artfully do that by hiring consultants, like you get a psychologist to give a psych evaluation of her on the stand. That's going to cost you $5,000. That's going to cost you $8,000. That's going to cost you a lot of money. So that may not be a big play. That may not be a play that you can make. So you have to understand your strategy of what is going to be a threat to her legally or mentally or emotionally or whatever. So, what is going to affect alimony, child support, custody, all those different things. If you don't understand those things, you need to study them. Okay. So this is where, if you're designing this yourself, you need to understand what works in the law. So a bad personality trait doesn't mean that you get to see your kids, because you can have a bad personality trait, and really listen to this. This is very hard for me to understand. You can have a bad personality trait. You can have done illegal acts. You could be abusive to other people in your life. But as long as it does not affect the kids and the kids can live safely, psychologically safe, all these things with somebody who might have a high dysfunction in their life that seems to make them a terrible mother or father, you can still have custody. All right. So that's pretty amazing. All right. That's hard for people to understand. What is going to get people out of custody is that, one, and this is custody, right? And again, not a lawyer. You need to talk to a lawyer in your state and so on, is going to be, do you care for the kids? Do you know what they eat? Do you know what time they sleep? Do you know their clothes sizes? Do you know their doctors? Do you know the different situations they have? It's all this stuff that a lot of moms are very good at. Do you take them to school? Do you pick them up? So a judge is going to look at that first, right? That is the foundation you must have for custody, at least in my understanding, in Travis County and so on. But then we look at these other things that can take away custody. So in order to get custody, you need a solid foundation of being a parent, which as a dad working all the time, you might not have. All right. So you need to start to get those things, right? And you might just want 50-50, or you might want expanded standard or standard visitation or those types of things. But legally, let me also tell you, is almost every judge, if you're a failure in almost every way, is going to give you expanded, or is going to give you standard visitation, which is usually like weekends and then like Thursdays and stuff like that, or every other weekend. So the red hot things that keep you from being a parent. So this is interesting. There's going to be things that keep you from being a parent, that allow parenthood to be taken away from you. And this is a big deal. And the courts do get this. So the courts we see as unfair. They're not as unfair as they used to be 10 years ago. But judges and courts know, even though they may not want to be used, or may not be, they may not have the patience to listen to all these cases, because they just see things after things after things, and it gets annoying for them. It's like, well, she's, borderline. She's, man, they don't care. They don't care, right? They unless you can prove it, they care. So the things that can take away a kid red hot would be abuse, violence, drug use. Okay, so those things all fall under abuse. But like physical abuse, there could be psychological abuse, but again, that's hard to prove. Physical abuse, how do you prove it? And then it's, why did you leave the kids alone with her? All right. Why did you not stop it? Why is this coming up now? And this is where it actually can work in your favor. If you're being called an abuser, your argument can be back to her is, well, why would I be left alone with the kids? If you knew these problems about me psychologically, like I have PTSD or I have whatever issues, why would you knew that, but yet you had kids with me, you let me watch the kids, and it happened day after day. Those things could be your argument, but those could also be her argument. All right. So, and then to which the rebuttal from the female and oftentimes males is like, well, I was a victim and I was abused, so I didn't know, and da. You have to be able to argue that back. All right. So you need to do that. You need to do that non-emotionally in front of a judge. So that's a lot of stuff, right? Just join a men's group and go over those things with your men's group if they know. Ours does. So then we get to a point of like, if there's drug use, how are you going to prove that? If you're going for drug use with her, they're going to go for drug use with you. They're going to go for fingernail, toenail. Toenails are like super accurate, but there has to be growth. They're going to go for body hair. Body hair is different than hair on your head. You can go back 12 months to that, but most courts only care about 90 days. All right. And they might care about a repetition of 90 days going on and on. In fact, most courts in Travis County. Keep it there. So, but you can press harder. So in my case, I can press harder because I've been clean for a long time. I can pass drug tests. It's not a problem. But a judge may not go, well, Steve, you could go for 1 year of the hardest, most strict drug test and not have anything come up. But we only care about 90 days. So a judge may only care about that. But just know that if you go for drug use, courts care a little bit, at least in Travis County, about drug use, but they care more about drug use around the kids. So there's a difference with that. All right. So you're allowed to have a drug problem. It's not good. It's bad character, but you can go to rehab. You can go to 12-step meetings. You can do that. Like you can do all this stuff. But if you're doing it around the kids, that is stop being a parent zone. Okay. Other things like neglect, like leaving the kids in a bathtub or putting the kids in danger, driving while intoxicated with the kids. These are things that are the immediate, you cannot be a parent thing, and we need to step in, and that's where the courts will step in. So most of the times, those things aren't there. And most of the times, if women are mad, they will attack you with these things. But when they attack you with these things, this is where people get stupid, and this is where I don't want you to be stupid, all right, is when they attack you with these things, they attack you with all this other stuff, all right? This is the trick. Man, you got to be smart with this. God, if if you could only just hire a really good lawyer, it would solve these things. And lawyer, it's a business. I get it. It's fucked up. A woman says, this is a concept. And again, if we get emotional during this, you're going to piss off the courts. They see this thing up every day, day after day. You did that. You did that. You did that. You did that. They don't want to see that. If there really is a play, they want to see it laid out well. Okay. Get a lawyer, join a men's group. If you can't get a lawyer, join a men's group. So then it's stuff like if you are saying, or if she's saying that you've abused the kids, she's also going to say you have psychological problems. She's also going to try and destroy your character. She's also going to try and make an excuse of why this was necessary. You can predict all of these. So check this out. If somebody's going to make a play that is so detrimental, that was with you in a relationship, whether you were married or not, somebody that they cared about is going to try and ruin your life, they're going to have guilt over that. All right. This guilt is going to predict where they're going to go. And everybody's different. You got to kind of come up with a psychological profile. So in order to deal with that guilt of saying that you suck and you should be put in jail for the rest of your life, they need to justify that they're a good person and a sane person. So they're going to say, I was psychologically traumatized. They're going to say, I'm a victim. You can predict their victimhood. And here's the thing. They will predict your victimhood, or at least the judge will, because they see this every day. It's a fucking pattern. It's ridiculous. Everybody thinks they're really smart while doing this. So in that, when you go to the point of saying like, man, she abused the kids or she did this, you need to cut out your justifications for that, because that's how she's going to attack you. You need to only attack of like, look, she abused the kids. She did this. And this is what happened. And it happened on these dates and in these ways. And here are my witnesses. And in Travis County, witnesses are more important than little videotape phone things, because you can kind of set yourself up with the phone, or you can set your partner up with the phone things. Like, people do that shit all the time. And people in Travis County, Texas, are sick of seeing that. So it's better to have witnesses that can emotionally compel a judge or a jury and those types of things. At least that's my understanding. The next thing is that when she attacks you and says, well, no, he's abusing the kids, he's doing this, or you have your checklist of all the things you've done wrong. When you're putting that out there, right? Or when she's putting that out there and telling the judge, the jury, the mediator, whoever, she's also going to include all this bullshit. All right. Now, these are the things you might be able to predict. He has PTSD. He has, PTSD doesn't exist, and he uses that as an excuse. You're going to be able to predict a lot of these things. He's violent in these ways. I see him yell in front of the kids. Okay, is this illegal or not? He has affairs. He's hypersexual. He's a sociopath. In his business, he handles things in the wrong way. There's going to be all this stuff that you're going to be able to ultimately predict. Now, when you predict those things, you have to be able to prove, or you don't have to. If they're lies, you want to prove that they're lies. Okay, and why is this? And this may be too complex, but it happens all the time. People see it all the time. So she says, he's abusing the kids, and that it is work. His coworkers say this, that blah, 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 that this is happening. Typical play to ruin reputation. All the time. Women and men do it in courts to justify their guilt or justify their actions of taking a harsh action. You then need to be able to prove, like, look, Your Honor, mediator, whoever I'm talking to, she is consistently, trying to ruin my reputation, and it's a pattern in these ways, and it's actually not true. Here's a letter from my boss. Here's a letter from these people. Now, they may not care about that, but if you can trap her in that lie. Now, this is interesting. So if you're in a courtroom, that happens in one way. If you're in mediation, that happens in another. So you're not allowed to cross talk to your partner in the court. When she's on the stand, your lawyer would have to set that up, and you need a lawyer. You need a lawyer for that. But in a mediation, you can start saying, well, look, maybe you don't want to show all your cards in a mediation either, because you might go to a hearing. But in that, you might say, well, look, so what is your motive in this, in saying this? What is your motive in saying that I'm a sociopath? Or what is your motive in saying that I have PTSD or PTSD doesn't exist? Is it to tell other people? Well, why did you tell these people that this happened when you're not a doctor or you haven't seen a diagnosis? Why would you say that? But you said that right when we split up. You said it during these times when we split up, Was it to convince people to get on your side? Because I think that that's more believable than being able to say that, XYZ. What's going to happen is when you confront somebody with those lies, people can think about their lies like one move down the road, not 3 moves down the road. So variations of 3 things confuse the fuck out of them. And then they panic, and then they start going in the same pattern of, judges, juries, lawyers are good at seeing this stuff. Why that is important is then if you build more discrediting of their character lying, it will make it more probable that they're lying about bigger things that they can't fully prove about abuse. So if there's not, kids saying that you abused them, if there's not pictures and videos of saying that you abused them, but there's a violent history where you got picked up by the cops for, getting in a domestic dispute with her 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 months ago, whatever, that can matter, but you want to be able to stop. You want to be able to stop that. That is what it is. That is what it is. That happened. Did it involve the kids? No. All right. Did it involve, was it brutally your fault? Was it partially, was she involved in it? Were you guys in a fight where she was attacking you too? Like these things have to be able to be determined, and they're easier to forgive by a court. So there's a lot of stuff here, and I could go on and on. I'm 20 minutes into this one, so I'm going to pull the plug on it. But this is part of the reason why you do want a men's group. If you go in unrepresented, please just start with getting a men's group, getting some psychological help. You can download the free PDF that I have. But the third thing, write down everything that you've done wrong. Then next to that, write down everything she's done wrong. Study the law of what is black and white about not being able to be a parent, what will put you at a greater rate at alimony, which is usually just math, what will make things harder on a divorce, like simple things like if you move out first, that puts you in a less strategic place in terms of divorce. So look at those very legal black and white things that can affect you. You can find them online, but don't get caught up in like stupid forums with angry men. Get caught up in forums where lawyers are actually specifically talking about certain stuff in certain things in your state and in your county. And then after that, you can look at all the other things that might help you strategize, like personality traits and defects and so on, and certain patterns. And more of that is a strategy in the moment to take away power from her or discredit those things that might discredit a bigger play that she's trying to make, which are those black and white things of abuse, drug use, neglect, and so on from the kids. Bottom line is, if you can be a parent, if you don't have that hard stop, the court wants you to have your kids, and they're going to give you weekends unless there's drugs, abuse, or some sort of like heavy neglect. And those are the things you want to defend and look at. You can be a great man even if your kids get taken away. That's what happened to me. That's what happened to other guys in the group. You can be a great man if you go, fuck, I only get every other weekend with my kids. You can be a great man also with 50-50. And you can be a great man with full custody. So what I want you to look at is this blip of divorce is bad. It's really traumatic and hard. But the real thing with that pain is it's going to teach you to do some great stuff with your life. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Watch my other videos, subscribe, all that sort of stuff, and get on the AMD board. And yeah. Hope you had a good 4th of July.